Hey guys, this is Bree, and I'm going to share with y'all the psychological impacts of being a military brat. So, what is a military brat? It basically means being a military kid or a child of a military parent. Though there is a negative connotation with the word brat, if you add military art before it, it becomes a term of endearment. There's very little evidence on who actually coined the term. Some think that it dates back hundreds of years to the British Empire, and it stood for British Regiment Attached Traveller. However, all attempts to trace this theory have failed to find a legitimate source. There have been brats around for hundreds of years, and they used to be known as little traveler, or when a child and the spouse of a soldier would follow the army during wartime and aiding in the camps. My story of being a military brat is no different from really any other brat. I was born in Chesapeake, Virginia, and moved to Rhode Island for a bit, then back to Virginia, this time to DC. I then moved to Okinawa, Japan for 6 years and eventually landed here in San Diego, California. Even though that doesn't sound like a lot of moves, I actually moved 14 times with my family as we often moved around for bigger housing. With all those moves that brats go through, it's normal to have moved 10 times before the age of 12. This is why brats will always grimace or struggle to come up with an answer to the question, hey, where are you from? The average brat moves schools 6 to 9 times before high school graduation. All these moves are due to something called PCS, or permanent change of station. They typically happen around every 3 years. Military bases even go through something called PCS season. Hey, there's my mom and dad. In this photo, my dad just got off his carrier after a long deployment. My new to America Aussie mom was pretty relieved. Deployments for brats often mean 6 to 18 months away from family, where the family left behind must adjust to this new normal. Life in between deployments can be pretty rough too. Once the family gets into a new rhythm without their soldier being with them, the service member comes back after the family finally finishes adjusting and getting through sadness. Sherry Stone, a military psychologist that I interviewed, says it throws the homeostasis off. They're back into a new rhythm of, but they were doing that. How do we fit you back in? Life after the service member retires or a brat enters adult life can get pretty confusing too. They now have to adapt to being in the civilian world where people aren't constantly moving every 3 years and parents aren't across the world. They often experience a need to prepare for another move, or they feel like they shouldn't stay in one place for too long. It's also really hard to connect with people who've had friends since they were in kindergarten. While military brats are very resilient and adaptable, they can also be very vulnerable. Many studies have shown that combat deployments increase the risk for abuse, neglect, attachment problems, and inadequate coping. Struggling with developing and maintaining deep, lasting relationships with people can often make brats feel like outsiders to U.S. civilian culture. So are they more prone to mental illness? The simple answer is yes, but it's important to know that every brat is different with different experiences. Often deployments are enough of a stressor that can lead to depression, anxiety, and behavior problems. It can also be a bit of a struggle to find counselors or psychologists that know how to best respond and select appropriate interventions for military youth. Does this mean that military parents struggle with raising military kids? Well, every parent has their struggles with raising, but military parents may have a few extra stressors. They often have to go through a lot of single parenting, with a lot of adjusting and no foreseeable future. If the family isn't dual active, then the parent left behind, who usually was originally a civilian, is just as involved as the kids. Many parents sometimes regret having to put their kids through the military world. They wouldn't want to put the extra stressors on their kids, like constantly moving and uprooting their life every couple of years. Every family only wants stability. Luckily, there's a good amount of easy coping mechanisms kids and parents can do. For kids, draw upon what they're already doing. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, just work off what's already working. It doesn't have to be anything magical, simply watching Netflix, drawing, hanging out with friends can do wonders. Help remind yourself what brings you joy. For parents, it's important to talk to your kid. Kids can often see if you're being dishonest or trying to hide something. Be open and interested in their life, but don't be intrusive. It's also important to note that parents need to help themselves first before they can properly help their kids. It's like what safety instructions airplanes always say. Put your own mask on first before helping others. It's the same thing here. What works for kids can also work for parents and vice versa. It's just important to do what you think is right. While brats can often struggle in civilian worlds, they often can find many ways to succeed. Their resiliency makes them excellent workers, and they typically excel in work environments where orders must be kept. This may be why some brats choose to join the military and continue the military legacy, but many can succeed outside of it. Brats have exceptional social skills, a high level of multicultural or international awareness, and a proficiency in foreign language. Studies have shown that they graduate from college at a higher rate and divorce at a lower rate than the civilian population. Often parents from an early age teach their brats what respect means from things like saying yes ma'am, no ma'am, yes sir, no sir, and they often punish if they don't, as they do in the military. It teaches them what respect means, and that often gets them far in the workplace. Of course, there are a lot of negatives, since from an early age, many brats have to face stressors not commonly seen in a quote-unquote normal childhood. Studies show a significant amount of ex-military brats may exhibit symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD. Some brats may also have to deal with the grief of losing a parent. I conducted an anonymous survey with the goal of seeing what military brats have in common. 61 responded with ages ranging from 0 to 8, 9 to 14, and 15 to 21 plus. 77% had an active duty parent, and respondents came from all over the country. At first, many basic questions were asked to set up a background. Then as they progressed, more profound questions were asked. An example is, have you ever resented a parent for leaving on deployment? Often brats have to deal with a lot of increased responsibility, like taking care of siblings or being the man of the house. Resentment can even continue when the soldier comes back, creating a barrier when trying to reintegrate a parent. Another question was, do you feel as if you've had enough support growing up as a military brat? A majority of 40 respondents said yes, which is reassuring. Unfortunately, some felt they didn't, connecting to how professionals don't understand what it's like to be in the military. Places like the VA or Veterans Affairs and people like Sherry Stone work to try to overcome this obstacle. A final question of do you feel proud to be a military brat was asked. An overwhelming majority said yes. Many don't know of this hidden subculture that's often blocked out by its bigger culture, the military. It's important that a light be shined on the millions of brats around the world, and so that people understand that they don't have access to the help they deserve. Everyone loves to be recognized. Brats are no different.